Those of you who miss regularly will know that we are absolutely delighted that we can hear who's joining us through our chat box. So please do, if you're inclined to, take the time to tell us who you are, where you're joining from. And indeed, we know that some of our colleagues join groups, and even for themed week, you might have hired a room, booked a room rather, and had a group of colleagues join. So please do share that. And if you can, take photos, share them with our shared inbox for open disclosure, and we'll get that on LinkedIn. We want to promote as many of your activities as possible. And who knows, may end up in Health Matters magazine if you submit your photo to us. So we've spoken through the detail here and onto the more technical pieces of housekeeping. As with all of our webinars, the session is recorded. Your videos are turned off, and you'll remain muted for the duration of the session to allow speakers to give their presentation to us, and we'll take questions at the end through questions delivered into the chat box. So please do keep your questions rolling in. Kelly and I will be monitoring the chat and sharing those to be put to our speakers at the end. We know sometimes the technology can fail us, so we do have details here for dialing in if the audio is compromised where you are. On CPD, we regularly have our webinars CPD accredited. You can obtain 2 CEU points for a NIMBY if that is your professional regulator. Our CPD points for RCPI are to be confirmed, but this for both these CPD points only apply when you're attending the live webinar. So if you're watching this back in months or weeks to come, unfortunately you cannot obtain those CPD points without, as I say, watching it live. If you want to obtain those points, please do email us at our shared inbox as is featured there after the webinar. We are very grateful to our 2 Irish Sign Language interpreters. We have Catherine White, who is doing a fantastic job already, as I hope you can see, and she will be joined by her colleague Shannon Clark. We might, you might also take advantage of the closed captions facility, which is part of WebEx, and there are details there. And we can put those details in the chat box, both this and the dial-in option to support you if your technology becomes compromised. So I will just stop speaking and introduce our speakers for today. And we have Dr. Teresa Donnelly, the Director of the Centre of Nursing and Midwifery Education, Sligo, Leitrim, West Cavan.
Morning all.
And hi, thanks so much. And Selene, Daly, Tarpey, who is a nurse tutor also at the Centre of Nursing and Midwifery. So I will hand it over to them now with our thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me and see my presentation?
We can, thank you.
Great. So I suppose I'll kick off by, we really want this to be interactive. I'm so glad to be here. I have to say, I'm even more relieved that my manager and my friend and mentor, Dr. Teresa Donnelly, is here with me today to speak about this, because she is certainly the go-to person when it comes to everything to do with psychological safety, with cultural competency, and with stress management. So I suppose to start, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I might get Teresa to introduce herself too. So my name is Selene Daly Tarpey, to give my full title. I'm a registered general nurse. I trained in Sligo University Hospital. way back in 1997, worked in medical for a few years, which I absolutely loved. I had a love for skin all my life. And so I spent 18 years working in dermatology as a CNS, and I managed to register as an AMP. I always had an interest in patient safety, quality. I loved clinical audit as part of my practice. So I was fortunate enough to work with colleagues who are on the call here as well today, under the National Centre for Clinical Audit, under the National Quality Patient Safety Directorate. And I absolutely loved the experience. I'm working here as a nurse tutor in the centre since December of last year, and I absolutely love what I do now. So Teresa, I might get you to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, it's still morning time, so I'll say good morning, everybody, and I'm delighted to be part of this webinar. As I was saying earlier, I was one of the first open disclosure trained people in the Northwest, and would have been involved in rolling out open disclosure education. Very passionate about open disclosure. I'm very passionate about quality and patient safety. As I always say, none of us come into work to do harm. We don't. We come in to do a good job. The majority of people that I know come to work every day to do a good job. I was one of those people, and I was involved in a major incident a number of years ago, and it had a huge impact on me. Thankfully, it had a good outcome, and I witnessed the benefits of risk management, clinical governance, and open disclosure in supporting not only our patients but also ourselves. And from that, and we all know when things go wrong, an awful lot of people drop out. They just drop out and they think there has to be an easier life, and many's a day I went through that phase as well. Or people actually just exist and they just go from day to day and wait for that famous retirement that we all wait for, or else people thrive, and they say, you know, we can make things better. And I'd like to think I was one of those people. I went on then to support a lot of people in practice. So I'm very happy to give my time to support this webinar. I've just recently completed a PhD in stress, and it's something I probably would never have thought I would have done, but it was as a result of my major incident. It absolutely encouraged me to thrive. So again, I'm always available to support anybody. So delighted to be here today. So that's me, Teresa Donnelly, Director in Sligo, also in background in the acute services. I worked in the peri-op setting for nearly 30 years. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. So I suppose today we just wanted to define what psychological safety is and cultural competency as well. We want to explain the benefits of psychologically safe and culturally competent teams for staff and patient outcomes. And we'd like to identify some behaviours and leadership practices that promote inclusion, collaboration and learning. And we want to give you some practical tools and communication strategies as well to strengthen team culture in your own settings. So I suppose I love telling a story, and I come from a big family storytellers. I know Teresa is the quintessential storyteller too, and I think we can learn so much through stories. So I just want to give you a little, I suppose, a tale, a cautionary tale about something that happened to me many years ago, well, during COVID. So this picture came from the Irish Examiner. And during COVID, the HSE Communications Department wanted to do a number of stories about people working in healthcare, about what their day-to-day experience was, particularly during COVID. So somehow or some way, I got a phone call asking me to do this. So I did. And my entire family was absolutely mortified because I did kind of step by step what I did during the day. And look, it kind of went to my head a little bit. So I was in the front of the paper and the head was swollen a little bit, as my mother would say. And there I was thinking I was absolutely wonderful. And a day in the life. So I had completed my master's in dermatology this time. I'd worked for a number of years within the space, and I suppose I was the senior nurse working in that space. And I was well educated when it came to dermatology, well experienced. And again, I suppose after completing a very senior bit of research as part of my master's, I thought, God, I'm on the top of my game here. I'm really doing well. And again, a controlled environment. So it was an outpatient environment or day surgery environment, which is controlled. And this particular, when the story starts is, on this particular day, I had a very bad night with two children. The children were small at the time. They were sick the whole night. And I think people on the call will be very familiar with that. You're a nurse or you're a healthcare professional, you're working, your kids are up all night, either vomiting or fevers or whatever it was. And that was a particular night in my house. So at this occasion, I drove into work. I was extremely tired. I didn't have anything to eat. I was dehydrated myself, started off, ran into work, and it was an overbooked clinic on this particular day. So I just thought, you know what, if I can just get this clinic over with, keep going, and get to the end of it. Interesting enough, about 4 weeks before this this event happened, we had to start a little journal club within the space. So every Wednesday at 12:30 we'd meet and we'd have a little discussion around, you know, maybe a journal article we'd read, something that was interesting, potential clinical audit or a piece of research. And this particular event, I asked one of the staff members, you know, is there something about me, about my style, that you would change? And it's very hard to ask people that question. It's very hard to ask people their opinion of you and be honest. So this particular person said to me, do you know, Selene, you go headlong into things all the time. You dive in without actually explaining what's happening. And I was completely unaware that I'd actually done that. And I said, you know, okay, I completely accept it. And, you know, you're right now that I think about it. Is there anything that is there anything that I can do to change that? And we said, you know, we're going to go up with this phrase, stop, Selene. Just stop what you're doing. Stop. The power of the pause. So anyway, we adopted that, thought, right, this is how we're going to move on. So 4 weeks later, I'm there, I'm standing, I'm starving, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm a bit narky, and the clinic is moving forward. Somebody came in at the last minute, around 12:30. I thought we were going to get a break. This person came in, they had a procedure done with plastic surgeons. They were going to, and I had to do a dressing change on this particular person. And again, I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I was tired. My 2 colleagues came with me. I took off the dressing, and what I thought I was looking at was a piece of meat pour. It wasn't a piece of meat pour. It was actually the skin graft, and I was not prepared for it. I didn't know what I was looking at. And what my colleague said to me, I don't know about this, Selene. And I said, oh, I think I know. I think it's okay. And then she said, no, stop, Selene. And I thought, okay, let's take a step back. The power of the pause. So when we stopped, what we did was we'll take a 2-minute break here. Let's just regroup here and see what we can do. Contacted colleagues in Galway, found out the correct procedure and how to do this dressing. And then we went, sat down, had something to eat. And then we had a reflection after that. So using the old Gibbs reflective cycle, which we're so familiar with, and you know, what happened, what actually happened, in fact, what could have happened, and what would I do differently? And again, I was thanking the staff to say, God, if we hadn't had this conversation, if we hadn't have had this, you know, honest conversation, truthful conversation about, you know, a potential safety issue here in the department, this outcome would have been far different. And I suppose it was a near miss, and sharing that is vulnerable, and sharing that at the you know, talking to colleagues at the time and saying, okay, you know, I might have my master's, I might have been in the front of the paper, but that doesn't mean I'm not human, and I'm vulnerable to human factors as well. So again, when we're asking what is psychological safety, oh, sorry, I'm just going to hide the window. Psychological safety means the feeling of being able to openly speak and being true to oneself without fear of facing negative consequences on one's image, career, or status. Hence, psychological safety in the workplace is the ability to foster a shared sense and culture of empowering individuals to express ideas, raise concerns, and ask questions without unnecessarily feeling afraid to experience an unfavorable impact on their team. So what are the benefits? So I suppose if we dive into the research and we find out, you know, what does the evidence tell us? It improves patient safety and reduces errors. Teams with higher psychological safety report more near misses and adverse events, which leads to learning and safer care. And that's what open disclosure is all about. It enhances staff well-being and reduces burnout. Psychologically safe environments are linked with lower stress levels, higher morale, and a reduced turnover among nurses and doctors. It encourages open communication. Staff can feel safe to speak up about concerns, mistakes, or new ideas without fear of blame, fostering a culture of transparency and learning.
Celine, sorry, Celine, to interrupt you.
Sure,
Celine, there's just some comments in the chat that some people are having difficulty seeing the slides.
Sure.
If you don't mind just stop and sharing maybe, and we'll try and reshare and see does that help. Thanks, Celine, and sorry to interrupt.
Thanks, Kelly.
Will I reshare, Kelly, or do you think, is it my
maybe just try share again, Celine, and we'll see if that helps. I think it was over during the crossover, maybe something happened.
No.
Lorraine, can you see that?
It's just we're just looking at the circle of doom, so I'll just wait 1 minute. We see a few thumbs coming up, but still.
It seems to be okay. People are saying they can see it now, so.
Okay, perfect.
Yes,
thank you, Celine.
For me, I can't see it, Kelly, but maybe the majority can see it.
And I suppose just to say, we will be sending these out. We're more than happy to share them as well.
Yeah, so it's just a bit strange. Some of us can't, so we might just carry on, I suppose, if can't see it. No, not yet.
Eddie, do you want to, will I stop and you can share the PowerPoint?
Yeah, maybe that might help. Yeah, thanks, Selene. I'll just thanks everyone for your patience, and we're sorry about this.
It's unusual. Half the people seem to be able to see it, and they're not. So thank you. Sorry for interrupting your flow. That was a brilliant story, Selene.
I think it's a sign into WebEx thing. I think once you sign in, you can see and hear more and interact than if you're not, so no harm.
Just move to right to load.
Just twirling around.
Perfect, great. So I hope everyone can see that now.
Not yet.
Just for people that can't see it, if you can see at the top, if there's the squares where we see people along the top, if you select it, it might bring it down to the main view then. And if anybody who can't see the slides, if they want to email our office, we can send you the slides so you can work through them yourself. Maybe if that's helpful as well, Emma, you might just keep an eye on the OD inbox.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We don't.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Selene, about that.
No problem whatsoever. So I'll start again. It promotes teamwork and collaboration. So teams of psychological safety show better problem solving, trust and cooperation, which is crucial in multidisciplinary healthcare settings. It supports continuous improvement by encouraging reporting and feedback. Psychologically safe workplaces are better positioned to innovate and adapt to system challenges, which now we always have system challenges in the HSE. It improves patient outcomes really importantly. So research shows links between psychological safety, effective teamwork, and improved patient satisfaction and health outcomes. So I don't know, Kelly, can I move this on myself, or I probably have to get you to move on to the next slide, Kelly, sorry. Great. So a really interesting piece of research that took place back in 2012, over 2 years, was the Google Project Aristotle. So this was a large-scale 2-year study of 180 teams at Google. And what they wanted to find out, they wanted to identify what makes great teams. And we all know great teams. We know great teams in hospitals, we know great teams in restaurants or shops or stores that we go to. And what is that missing ingredient? What is the recipe? What they found was the most important thing to make a great team was team dynamics matter more than individual talent. You can have the most qualified, talented person, but if everyone is relying on that one person, if there's not a good team environment in that space, it's not going to work that well. And next slide, Kelly. So what are the 5 keys? And again, this is the result of this Project Aristotle research that went on for a couple of years. The number 1 key ingredient in a successful team is psychological safety. So team members feel safe to take risks and speak up without fear of embarrassment. If you have psychological safety within a team, you're going to have a very efficient team. Number 2 then was dependability. So members reliably complete tasks on time and to high standards. So if you're working with a team that you know you can rely on, that again, that's the second most important ingredient in the recipe. The third then is structure and clarity. So if everyone has very clear roles, goals, and everybody knows what they're supposed to do, that again is an important ingredient in a successful team. So that very famous is Brené Brown saying that being clear is being kind. If there's a very clear framework of your structure and your job description, that will lead to being successful in your role. Having meaning of work. The work has personal significance and purpose for team members. I think sometimes we can lose sight of that we need to be proud and we need to feel like we're part of a team, and it's so important. The first week I was here, Teresa has a poster outside the front door here in CNME in Sligo, and within the week my job description, my title, and who I was, and my picture was on that poster within the first week, and my name was up on the screen. So I felt part of the team immediately, and you cannot underestimate underestimate the power of that feeling, especially if you're a new member of the team or if you're new to the country. That's really, really important. And whether we're nurses, we're doctors, occupational therapists, physios, whatever we're doing within our space, we have to be made feel that we're part of the team and that we're part of a brand that we're really, really proud of. There's a tiny little story. When I remember a few years ago, I was speaking with a lady, and she told me that her mother was a nurse, and she was in her 50s at this time, and her mum was a nurse because she loved her nursing. And back in the day, she used to wear a hat. So nurses used to wear a hat as part of the uniform, and she used to drive around town with her hat on the back of the car, where the back window was, so that everyone could see it, because she was so super proud of her job. And I remember, the negativity in me was like, God, really, she's driving around with her hat, thinking, wow, what, why would you do that? And then it hit me about way back in 97. I said, when I started nurse training, I remember being accepted into the nurse training program in Sligo Hospital, and I was so proud. It was like winning the lotto of life. I really wanted to do nursing, and I was successful in getting on a training scheme, and I was so proud of myself, and my family were so proud of me. And we shouldn't forget that. We are doing a great job and there is meaning to our work. So we should feel part of the team and we should be proud of what we do. And again, knowing there's an impact of our work. If team members believe their work matters and contributes to wider goals, they're going to want to work in that team. And that's really important as well, to have that meaning for your work. So next slide, Kelly. So what is psychological safety? It's about honest and respectful interactions, not forced niceness. Have you ever had someone that's been forced nice to you or fake nice to you? The fake smile, and it's not genuine. That's not that's not what psychological safety is. So it's being honest and respectful. It allows for healthy debate and constructive conflict. And conflict is not easy. A lot of us are running a million miles from conflict, but it's about being able to voice your opinion without other people being offended. And it's about being able to have a constructive conversation, not an argument with raised voices, but a constructive conversation. It means all voices are heard, even if not every idea is chosen. So it's important that you have that environment where you work, where your voice can be heard, where your opinion matters, and that it's going to be something that's going to be considered, but it might not be chosen. That's okay too. It encourages accountability and commitment to shared goals. It supports raising concerns or issues in a really productive way. So again, if there's an issue, it doesn't mean that it has to be conflictual and high energy argument. It just means that we can actually use psychological safety to come up with a solution. It fosters appropriate openness and trust without oversharing. And it's a foundation for stronger teamwork and better outcomes, not an end to itself. So it's omnipresent, it's ever present within your spaces and is there to assist with better outcomes for our patients, which is really, really important. Next slide there, Kelly. What it's not about being agreeable or overly nice all the time. So again, that's a fake kind of environment, isn't it? It's not about the absence of disagreement or conflict. It's not a guarantee that every idea will be praised or adopted and that all team members realise that. It's not permission to slack off or avoid responsibility. It's not a free pass for constant complaining either, which is a negative. It's just constant complaining just gets us all nowhere. And it's not about sharing every personal detail or oversharing either. It's not the ultimate destination. It's a means to achieve better teamwork and outcomes. And really what it is it's a just culture. So next slide there, Kelly. I like this little diagram of what a just culture is. So a just culture, and we can break it down very fundamentally into these three parts. A just culture, when we talk about human error, when you talk about what Selene did there with the near miss, it was an unintentional mistake. And as Teresa said, nobody goes in the morning time to do damage. Everyone wants to go in and do a good job. So if there is human error, which was unintentional, that should be supported by consolation, and it should be supported by training and system fixes through things like quality improvement processes, things like reporting through NIMS and coming up with a quality improvement piece of work. If there's at-risk behaviour, taking shortcuts and misjudgment, that needs to be coached and corrected. So again, often when people feel under pressure within healthcare settings, they can start taking shortcuts, trying to do their job, trying to get the job done, just like I was doing that day. I was trying to get the clinic finished. But again, what we need to do there is coaching and correcting, raising awareness and reinforcing standards. We often, and again, our friend and colleague, Moya, now retired from Sligo, would always say, Teresa, I hope I'm not misquoting her, slavishly stick by your PPPGs, slavishly stick by them. They're not there just as a piece of paper or document up on a Q-Pulse platform, for example. They're there to guide safe practice. So again, coaching and correcting and raising awareness of the standards that we all need to have. Then when we look at reckless behaviour, if somebody is consciously disregarding safety, then that needs disciplinary action if it's reckless or willful. So again, psychological safety isn't about everyone holding hands and singing everything's wonderful and that there's no there's no discipline, there's no governance. There absolutely is governance, but we're all working together in a just culture. And I suppose that's why I want to share the story at the very beginning as well. Teresa's our director here, but you know, and we have the most incredible team and we have the most incredible place to work and we do wonderful things. But the really important part to remember as well is that, you know, psychological safety is everybody's business. It's not just up to the director, the CNM2, the ADON to create the psychologically safe space. It's up to absolutely everybody in teams. And often we can forget people like our staff nurses, but our clerical officers, our cleaners in our space, everybody who's coming into our space, everybody who's contact with our services and our patients. It's up to everybody to create this just culture. It's up to everybody to be aware of psychological safety as well. And next slide there, Kelly. So how can we create a psychologically safe space? Again, showing humility, acknowledging limits to your knowledge, and emphasizing that where we work is a complex and evolving space, so everybody's input is vital. So again, it's, you know, when we work within structures where we've got to a certain stage, so again, when we have jobs like advanced nurse practitioner roles, or we're in charge, we're directors or managers, it can be very difficult to show humility. It can be very hard to acknowledge our limitations because we feel we're exposing ourselves. But it is never exposing yourself if you acknowledge that you don't know something. It is the first line of patient safety. If you don't know what you're doing, you need to pause, the power of the pause. And again, healthcare is complex and ever evolving and changing. No day can be like the other day. We were having a conversation this morning about the fact over the last 20 years, our jobs have changed incredibly. In other industries, they haven't changed at all. So we have to acknowledge it's complex. We need to set the frame, define the work as challenging and uncertain, and highlight why collaboration and multiple viewpoints are essential. Everyone's viewpoint is essential. It can be that one little nugget from somebody that can change the way the structures work in a better way. But if we don't have those voices, if we can't hear them, we can't change. We need to practice curiosity as well. We need to ask open and thoughtful questions and encourage contributions from different roles and perspectives. Somebody that may not be working in your speciality may have something to add. They may have worked in a hospital in Dublin and now work in the West Coast, or vice versa. They may have done something a little bit differently that can improve efficiency. They may have had an experience like I described and like Teresa shares as well, where there's been a patient safety incident, and we can all learn from that. There is all learning. We also need to respond with empathy. We need to listen actively and with respect, and appreciate contributions focusing on learning and moving the conversation forward, that we don't get stuck in that space of everything is awful, everything is terrible, because nothing's going to change. We need to be able to communicate better. So again, humility is recognizing that no one has all the answers, valuing the insights and contributions of every single colleague. We need to admit when we don't know something and invite collaboration, acknowledge mistakes as opportunities and not a witch hunt, but it's an opportunity for shared learning. We need to seek perspectives from colleagues across all roles and levels and share credit for team successes rather than taking it on individually. And again, seeking all those perspectives from people, even if their opinion we don't agree with. And next slide, Kelly. And then setting the frame, naming the challenge, being open and acknowledging the uncertainty and complexity of where we work. You know, if we're working in a space where we have extra patients, there's trolleys on corridors, there's no point in not acknowledging that. It is, you know, we are at capacity and plus capacity, or, you know, we may not be on a day, we may not have enough staff on for the day, to acknowledge that, not to kind of hide and say, well, that ain't happening, because, you know, again, that doesn't encourage open conversation. Clarifying your purpose, reminding the team why we're all together, emphasizing interdependence, so stating clearly that no single role has a whole picture, so collaboration is really required, inviting all voices and encouraging people to share insights, concerns and questions, but making clear that their input will shape a safer outcome so that they will be encouraged to speak. And next slide, Kelly. And again, trying to encourage curiosity. And sometimes we don't feel like encouraging curiosity, but asking those open questions, what and how, pausing, listening, giving time for quieter voice to join. We all know those quieter voices in the room, and it's often those quieter people that will have the answer. It's just that they can find it difficult to speak. On research, when we ask people, what are you most afraid of? It's not spiders, it's not horror movies. People are most afraid of publicly speaking. So obviously you're listening to me now for the last, God help you, half an hour or so. And myself and Teresa, we're fine with public speaking. Most people are not. So again, it's encouraging people and having that safe space where people can speak, directly asking colleagues from different roles for their perspective and showing that vulnerability, showing appreciation for ideas, even if they're not adopted. Connecting suggestions together to show collective value as well is really important. And then emphasising that differences of opinion can help the team learn and adapt. And again, diverse views are fabulous. And now we're aware that the more and more people are neurodivergent, and that we're recognising neurodivergency. And often, again, it's the neurodivergent people that will come up with a solution. Next slide there, Kelly. Empathy is hugely important, expressing gratitude and genuine appreciation when colleagues share their ideas, even if the message is challenging. And that's the master's level, isn't it? That's really hard. Receiving difficult news with openness, errors or concerns should be met with kindness, support and problem solving, not blame. I often say to the teenagers at home, please come and tell me if something's happened. I will not chew you down. Just please tell me and we'll discuss it. You know yourself, if children or teenagers or work colleagues are afraid, they're going to try and hide. They're not going to be open and talk to you about it. Normalise learning from setbacks, shifting that focus from failure to growth. We have an opportunity for improvement. So that's the catchphrase. We have an opportunity for improvement here. And then maintain respectful boundaries, building a culture where constructive feedback is encouraged, but personal attacks or belittling behaviour are never acceptable. Next slide, please. So again, how safe is it to speak up and take risks in this team? So again, this is from a researcher who, a psychologist who specializes in psychological safety. And it's just a checklist. And when you're listening to me, just think about your own team where you work. If you make a mistake in your team, is it held against you? Are you able to bring up problems and tough issues? Do people in the team sometimes reject others for being different? Is it safe to take a risk where you work? Is it difficult to ask other team members for help? Do people on the team deliberately act to undermine your efforts? Are your unique skills and talents valued and utilised? So again, that's Amy Edmondson, who has a fantastic YouTube video if you're interested in more about psychological safety. And next slide, please. And we're over to Dr. Teresa.
Sorry, I didn't realise that was me. Again, thanks for that, Selene, and hello again from me. This is something I'm quite passionate about, and we've been working very closely, and we're very fortunate in the Northwest in that we all work very close together, but I think it's important to build those relationships. We've been working with our local acute hospital, our Director of Nursing there, Maura Heffernan, and our Director of Midwifery, Julianne Henry. So we've got together looking at, I suppose, diversity, looking at the different cultures that's within in our settings and how we can support from both sides. As a result of that, we thought, how best can we support people and that they will also understand our patients and understand us. So we came up with the idea between us of the Cultural Cafe. And again, it's a very simple idea. We meet once a month. So we launched it last month with Chidi from Nigeria. And he gave an overview of his culture. And in actual fact, what I actually found was listening to some of his stories. And we all know this, we're actually all the same, just because our skin might be a different color, we might have different beliefs, but an awful lot of our beliefs are the same. And sometimes when we open our hearts, we open our minds. So I suppose I aptly named my presentation, Unity and Diversity Makes Us Stronger, and it actually does. Next slide, please, Kelly. Sorry now, I think had I one before that, Kelly? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to I suppose I named that slide, but it's not coming up, I don't think. Strangers on the Shore. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with that tune, and it's an absolutely brilliant piece of work by Akerbilk from the 1930s. And it's a tune called Strangers on the Shore. The lyrics of it are very, very powerful. For me, I suppose I was once a stranger on the shore in that I wasn't able to get in to do nursing in Ireland, as many of my colleagues, my medical colleagues, physios, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and I actually was a stranger on the shore in the UK. And whereby there was no massive, obvious differences, I felt very much a stranger on the shore. I had come from rural Ireland. Our language, we spoke a different language among ourselves. Our patients didn't understand us. To be honest, I grew up in a house of boys, so I had never actually wore tights in my life. And I remember we were all called in even about how to dress ourselves. And I suppose, you know, when you look back, and we had no inherent differences. We tended to congregate together. We went to all the Irish clubs together. We went to all the Irish communities together because we've probably again felt safe in our own little groups. And then probably by the time as time had gone on, I felt I didn't come away just to stay in my whole group. So I mixed and I became very friendly with various different other groups of people. And I suppose that gave me a huge appreciation for cultural differences and increasing cultural awareness. So when I came back home, and you know, for a lot of my career, there was just, you know, mostly Irish people, but in more recent years, we so desperately need our international colleagues and people from varying cultures that it's so important to embrace that. And I'm so proud to say that I have so many good friends that are non-Irish. I have ventured across that shore, and I like to think that I no longer make people feel like they're stranger on the shores, because I know what that felt like. So I suppose just to give you an idea, go back to looking globally and looking worldwide. Like, so currently we actually have 1 million of our Irish citizens living abroad as we speak. And there's about 3 million people around the globe that have Irish passports. And I suppose 70 million people worldwide claim to be Irish. So 70 million of us out there. And the key countries where we have large Irish populations is the United States. So 36 million people in the United States claim Irish descent. The United Kingdom has significant communities, particularly in London, Manchester, and Birmingham. Australia, again, is a huge destination for Irish immigrants. Canada, New Zealand, Argentina, South Africa, and countries like France, Germany, and Spain all have Irish expatriates, even though they might be in smaller numbers than other areas. And just this year alone, 35,000 Irish people emigrated to other countries. So I suppose the reason I put up those stats is our colleagues, and I suppose our fellow countrymen, are currently today strangers on the shore, in some shore. Okay, next slide, please, Kelly. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a lady by the name of Laura Sarant, and she's a Caribbean lady. She's won an OBE in the UK for her work around cultural competence. She wrote a very powerful poem, and it was called "You Called, We Came." And the poem talks about her experiences of coming from the Caribbean, coming to work in the UK, and all the various people, I suppose, that she would have worked with. It's very, very powerful. And I suppose when I talk about our international colleagues and our various cultures that we have in Ireland, we are so lucky to have them. They are so supportive of us. We actually called. We called and they came. So we are so delighted to have that mix, and it's about embracing that culture. And again, taken from the census, I've just a few stats there. So currently, the population of Ireland, I didn't realise it was that many actually, is 5.5 million. And 16.3% of the population are non-Irish. And that equates to 888,400 people. And again, I've just broke down, I won't bore you with stats because I don't particularly, but it's still good to know. We've over 100,000 Ukrainian people currently living in Ireland. We have 44,000 Pakistani, Indian citizens, 56,000, Nigerian, 8,300, Filipino, nearly 20,000. And again, you can see there in our UK nationals, there's nearly 150,000, and our Polish colleagues, there's 122,000. So we are quite a diverse country now, thankfully. And again, we have people constantly looking for international protection. Next slide, please, Kelly. And again, I've included some stats on that. So Kelly, I'm going to move on to the next slide in the interest of time. I like this information because we think, you know, we still think the only languages spoken in Ireland is English and Irish. But in actual fact, right now, there's 182 different languages in Ireland, 182. And 751,000 people speak a language other than English. So quite a significant number of our citizens speak a different language. And the most common, again, are Polish, followed by Romanian, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So 182 languages currently spoken in Ireland at this very minute. Next slide, please, Kelly. Again, looking at religions, and the reason I say this is just that we have an awareness that we're not in the majority. So again, Roman Catholics, the 69% of our countrymen Roman Catholics, and that's actually on the decrease. No religion is 14%, and that's on the increase. The Church of Ireland, again, there's 125,000, and you can see there, Orthodox, there's 100,000, Islam, 82,000, and Hinduism, 33. So if you think about that, sorry, next slide, Kelly, please. So if you think about that, what's that saying to us is that our colleagues that we are working with and our patients that we are looking after are from many, many diverse languages, religions. So it's very important that to be able to be empathetic, to be able to be kind, to be able to do the job that we do well, we have to have a greater understanding of each other and of each other's cultures. And I suppose just like even when we were doing the cultural cafe and our first speaker was Chidi from Nigeria, and he talked about in his culture, it's disrespectful to look somebody in the eyes, that's considered disrespectful to our patients. So he said it took him, you know, an awful lot of work to be able to overcome that barrier, because we consider it in our culture to be disrespectful not to look somebody in the eyes. So again, it's important to have that understanding. And I suppose and I remember going over to present in America a number of years ago, and we were talking about, different, and it was actually on a patient safety incident, and it was very interesting. We were talking about the different practices that went on in the operating theatre, and I remember one girl, she worked in an American hospital, and she says, "Gee, I can't leave my banana down, but the surgeon has gone with it." And we all started laughing because we said, "Oh my God, does that happen in America too?" So what that said to me is that we're pretty much the same the world over. Healthcare professionals were the same. Our patients are the same. It's the same issues, and it's the same illnesses, and it's the same problems that occur across regardless of where you work. So I suppose looking at culture competence, it is something when you see our stats that we need to be aware of. And I suppose what it is, it's the ability to interact effectively with people from different cultural backgrounds. And it goes beyond just knowing the facts about other cultures. It goes beyond that. We can all know the facts. We can Google, we can look up the facts. It's actually about our attitudes, our skills, and our awareness that allow individuals and organizations to respect and understand cultural differences. So it's more than just an awareness. It's about our attitude when we go to work. It's about our approach. It's about our inclusion. It's about how it's about how we make people feel. And you know that famous quote by Mayo, I may not remember what you said, I may not remember your name, but I will never forget how you made me feel. So it's about how we make people feel. I take a huge, I make a huge effort, and it's not a big effort, because when you get to know other people and you get to know other cultures, I've learned so much, and it's made me a better person. But I do make an effort to make time for my international colleagues. I have started line dancing with a couple of my Filipino colleagues, and we always have a good laugh. I meet a couple of my Indian colleagues for coffee, and it's about those little things. So I can say I have a greater understanding of cultures, but it's actually practicing what I preach, to have that inclusive approach. So it is important. And I suppose the key components, number one, it does include awareness that we need to recognise our own cultural values, and we need to be aware of our biases, and we all have them. So it's important to be aware of them. It's also, I suppose, about, you know, the assumptions that we make. We make assumptions, like, you know, I suppose when Chidi was coming to visit, and Maura and Juliana, we were all involved in this, and we were talking, and the team here in the CNME, and we were talking about, you know, we'll have scones and tea, because we automatically assume everyone will love a cup of tea and a scone. And you know what Chidi was saying, he would never eat scones or drink tea. So he brought some of his snacks with him, and would you believe, I says to him, now whatever you do, bring non-alcohol drinks, because the last thing we want is us all to be celebrating and be quite merry and then trying to get home from our cultural cafe. He actually brought a drink which is a Guinness drink, a non-alcohol Guinness drink, that they would use, and it's made in Nigeria actually, and they would use that when they're having celebrations. And he brought the equivalent of our crisps, which were quite nice. So, you know, it's about just having that different understanding and not making assumptions. I don't know what I assumed we were going to be eating, but it was very much the same as what we would eat here if we were having a snack, bar the scones and tea, of course. So again, the awareness, the knowledge. So what is the cultural practices, the beliefs, and the social norms? So again, it's having that respect, whether we agree or whether we disagree. It's about having that respect. And I remember years ago, I went off to do a urology course in the UK, and I did it in London, and I worked with some of my African colleagues, and we would have covered female genital mutilation, and it was something that probably I wouldn't have been familiar with for years. And I you know, very senior people that were on that course, and they had, you know, their own views on it, and it was just amazing to listen. And I came away, initially I had a very definite view on my thoughts, and by the time I had finished the course, my views had changed very much. So again, it's just looking at what's acceptable, what are the norms. Just because we might think something is normal doesn't necessarily mean, I'm sure there's lots of things we do that they don't think, that other cultures don't think is normal either. And I suppose we're all familiar with the old cures that we have in Ireland. When Chidi and I were conversing, pretty much similar, we think it's witch doctors, and you know, but in actual fact, we have our own witch doctors here, and we have our own cures. So again, it's about what is the social norms, and just about not being so judgmental, possibly. Again, skills. So how do we communicate across cultural boundaries? And again, it's important about showing openness, having that attitude that we respect and that we're willing to learn from each other. In healthcare, education, business, you know, it's critical for everything. It's critical for reducing misunderstandings or conflicts. It's critical for improving outcomes and satisfaction. It's critical for creating inclusive environments where everyone feels valued. And again, looking at dietary requirements, or, you know, religious requirements. So again, it's just important that we just have that greater understanding of each other. Sorry, next slide, Kelly, please. So I suppose cultural competence includes cultural intelligence. And what is that? So again, it's broken down. I'm not going to bore you too much. You can have a look at that. It's broken into cognitive, metacognitive, motivational, and behavioural. And it's just very, very important that we have a knowledge of norms, we have an awareness and understanding, we have an interest and confidence in adapting a multicultural setting, and that, you know, that we can interpret the verbal and non-verbal behaviours across cultures. As Chidi said, you know, in his country and in his culture, it's disrespectful to look somebody in the eyes. So sometimes when we might think somebody is standoffish, maybe they might be just struggling. We encourage here people to speak up all the time, speak out if they see there's something that isn't right. And again, it's about, as Selene has said, cultivating that psychological safe environment, regardless of what your background is, that you feel safe to speak up. Because what we also discovered from working with our international colleagues, that sometimes in other countries that's not actually permitted and it's not encouraged. And again, it's all about that different tiers of respect, that you know, people won't challenge and they won't speak up. So therefore we have a responsibility, and we can say forever you have a professional duty, you're obliged, but it might just not be in their background, it might not be the norm. So therefore, to be able to encourage people, to support people, and that they can see it is safe to speak up. So it is important, but also to understand why they may not want to, because they would have come from a different background where that was not encouraged. So again, it's through, I suppose, developing all these different skills and looking at the culture intelligence. And again, without going into the details, they do matter to understand and have a greater understanding. I always think maybe sometimes we do come with our biases. Our schools have become more diverse. The young adolescents that are coming up now are probably much more understanding. They have a greater understanding. I always think of the story. My middle child has very, very curly hair, tight curly hair, and we were and he was very slow to speak. His language was very poor. Anyways, it hasn't affected him, thank God. I always say to people now that worry about their children not speaking, don't worry too much. But I remember we were on holidays one day, and you know, you'd have them on the beach all day, because I had 3 under 4, and you'd be hoping you'd tire them out, that they'd sleep, that you might get a few hours sleep. But I remember we were on the beach all day, and there was a little German boy who was black, and neither of them could communicate with each other. So the parents were sitting over from us and we were sitting in one area, and the 2 boys played all day long, and they went down to the beach, up to the beach, and they were building sandcastles, and one would go for the water and the other would go on with bucket spades and whatever, and they had a great day playing. And later on that evening, when I was getting him ready for bed, and I had him in the bath, and I said, "Did you have a nice day with your new friend?" And he said, "I did." And I said, "Was there anything different between him and you?" He said, "Oh, there was, Mummy." He said his hair was much curlier than mine. And I thought that was just lovely, because that's all he saw. He didn't see that he couldn't speak English. He didn't see that their language, they had language barriers, the 2 of them, or that they were a different colour. His hair was curlier than his. So I just said, you know what, it's lovely. I just think it's lovely. And if we could just open our minds, we'd open our hearts, we'd open our minds. How do we develop it? And I'm delighted to say we're working very closely with our colleagues in the acute services, and it's expanding as we go on. On the 16th of this month, we're having some of our Indian colleagues coming in. And likewise, next month, we're going to have our Irish colleagues, because a lot of our, you know, practices people don't understand either. And I suppose I talk about, we had a country shop in a rural area, and I remember sending one of my sons to work in it when I was trying to keep them busy and keep them distracted. And he said, you know, the old country people would come in and they'd be looking, and he said, "Well, I don't understand because they don't speak English." He didn't understand, and that's us living in rural Ireland. He didn't understand what the customers were asking for, because they were old country men coming in. So again, it's important that our international colleagues understand us too. So that's important. So how do we develop? What can we do? We can all do something. Very simple, something very small, but it's very important. We can certainly all do something. And again, it's about just doing it, just taking the initiative. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Let's just do it. So self-reflection, we do need to sit and think, what are my biases? What are my assumptions? And we all have them, because maybe they've been passed on to us from our own backgrounds, our own families. So we do have our biases. So it's important to say, that's okay, I have my biases, but I'm going to open my mind and I'm going to try and understand. I suppose we need to be actively learning, looking at what are cultural norms, what are the communication styles, and what is social etiquette. We need to observe and listen, pay attention to behaviours, tones and body language. We need to adapt behaviour, be flexible and willing to change our approach, and we need to seek feedback. So what are your interests? You know, and I know when I talk to my colleagues and I talk to everybody, and I listen to everybody's story. And I know recently one of my Indian colleagues brought me back a sari. I haven't been brave enough to wear it yet, but it was a very nice gesture and it was absolutely beautiful, and the material is beautiful. But again, I suppose it's just being open-minded and understanding each other. So next slide, please. And I'm nearly done now. So why is it important? Why does it matter? Why is it important? Okay. So again, I suppose integrating cultural intelligence into healthcare, it's not a soft skill. Sadly or gladly, we have a massive global shortage, and I'm just speaking for nurses, but I know this is all healthcare professionals. We're currently sitting at a 9 million global shortage of nurses. We're struggling in Ireland for healthcare professionals, and that's across the world. So therefore, it is important that we make our country an appealing place to come, because we're not going to get a magic wand that's going to give us all the health staff that we need. We have a global shortage. So it's important that we make our settings, I suppose, as culturally accepting, and that we have that cultural intelligence and cultural awareness. So it's a necessity. It's a globalized necessity. I suppose when we listen and we're interested, we make our services flexible, we build trust, we ensure equitable care across different cultural contexts, but most importantly, we promote safe, quality care when we listen and we become more culturally intelligent. It's important to embrace diversity. It boosts inclusion, it ensures fairness, and it enhances skills. Next slide, please. I think, okay, sorry, we'll move on to the next one, please. I'm at the end. We've covered all that. Yeah, I think there's a bit of repetition here, so apologies for that. Next one, please. Yeah. So again, I'd just like to thank you all. I've been delighted to present here. We called, you came. We don't want people to feel like they're strangers on our shore. We don't want people to feel like they have to stick in their own little groups because we're not welcoming. And I suppose just my final remark is, our strength comes from not being the same, but from celebrating the unique gifts each of us brings. So that's where our strength comes from not being the same, but embracing differences. So thank you, everybody, and we'll take any questions and hopefully we'll be able to answer them between us.
Thanks very much, Teresa and Selene, for such really, really in-depth presentations. Really, really interesting. Selene, you covered psychological safety so well, and the importance of psychological safety, not only for our work areas, but for ourselves, and providing that psychological safe place for people in the implementation and embedding of just culture. And Teresa, we call you came to, a certain amount of us did train overseas and can probably understand, the difference of different cultures and that, or worked overseas. And it was really interesting to hear about the Culture Cafe, the use of that initiative of Culture Cafe. Again, reiterating the importance of respect for colleagues and how you think you come across as opposed to how you actually come across. So, and again, the importance of knowing our own biases and keeping that in check for ourselves as well. We called you came, a very, very nice way of putting things. We do have a number of questions. We have 4 questions, if that's okay. So the first question, I think it'll be for you, Selene, but obviously jump in, Teresa. We had a comment and a request for a piece of advice on this. So I once had a manager whom I saw as having the skills you speak about, and I was very happy in my work environment. Another colleague saw it as fake and that the manager was too sweet to be wholesome. I'm not sure if that was jealousy, but any advice on how to manage this type of situation?
I've heard that saying, so she's too sweet to be wholesome. In other words, this has to be fake. A lot of my husband's family live in the States, and I would have grown up hearing that as well about my own relatives in America saying, oh, they're so, this niceness and this must be fake. And actually it's not. It's that my lived experience is not. Teresa and colleagues in the mental health services in Sligo University Hospital here in the Northwest, and the integrated care folks, and we share a floor with wonderful people who are in Child First and across all those wonderful services in HSE. Teresa's championed, along with other services, something called Trauma Informed Care, and Teresa has launched it as a campaign called Think Tick, which is wonderful. So again, Trauma Informed Care says, and it's actually changed my life. So since I started working here in CNME, I was introduced to this concept. I'd never heard of it before. It's widely used across Scotland, and my background is dermatology. Recently discovered that in dermatology in Scotland, they have put this into all the training programs for both nurses and for doctors. So Trauma Informed Care asks, not why are you being like that, but what has happened to you? And the background, I suppose, of trauma informed care is that there are something called ACEs, adverse childhood events, that happen in a huge amount of people's lives. So almost 3/4 of people have experienced one adverse child event, which can be neglect, abuse, and there's a range of them, there's 10 of them. About 1 in 8 have experienced 4 or more. And if you have experienced trauma in your background, you're more likely to have poor health outcomes. You're more likely to have more mental health issues. You're more likely to, suffer from, and not do as well. And it's changed me because I now have that mindset of not why are you being like that. So when you read that first comment there, Loretta, if that happened to me now 2 years ago, if that was my lived experience, I'd be thinking, why are you being like that? When obviously she's just being nice and she's being a good person. But instead ask the question, what has happened to you that you are interpreting this, lovely managers interactions as being something that's fake, because maybe this person's lived experience has been she's been let down. And a lot of time in healthcare, and Teresa, please jump in here because you're the expert in the field here. A lot of times in healthcare, we're used to a culture of the bit of the nasty, the bit of the, the bit of I'm more used to people, being, aggressive in their interactions. I'm more used to, talking about people or, being negative about people than I'm not used to, and you will always go back to your own smell of home cooking. I heard that recently as well. What you describe your childhood as in your adjectives, if it's fearful, neglected, if it's afraid, that will smell like home cooking to you, and you will constantly want to go back to that piece. But I don't know, Teresa, have you any advice either?
Yeah, no, and I suppose again, like that with the trauma informed care, and looking at so why does somebody why does somebody react the way that they do? And sometimes when have you ever found this, that sometimes misery loves company? Misery loves to have a little bit of company. They like a friend. So sometimes when we say, well, in actual fact, I actually do believe she's genuine, it's amazing how you can change the mindset of somebody, because negativity will feed on negativity. So if you just ignore it, it nearly like you're supporting or endorsing it. If you don't make any, if you agree or say, but sometimes when you just say, actually, I didn't see that, a positive disposition or having a positive state of mind can also infect the whole idea. So maybe that's worth trying. Say, no, actually, I think she's trying hard, and maybe that other person might go away and think, God, yeah, maybe you're right, because sometimes negativity, I suppose, encourages negativity and it infects people. So it's just about, I suppose, flipping the thought, changing the mindset.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Selene, can I just ask you, can you just repeat the name then in relation to trauma-informed care, the trauma-informed care model in the Northwest?
Sure, it's called Think TIC, Think TIC. And again, we have sent Kelly on. Kelly's going to drop our QR code in the chat box, and that's for the prospectus. So everything that we do in CNME, Sligo, Leitrim, Cavan, is on that prospectus. And again, Teresa's opened the doors for everybody. More than welcome to come in. Yeah, so Think TIC, and we'll be putting on further dates.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thanks a million.
And I suppose just to briefly just say, Loretta, that program is ran by, like, we've experts from social inclusion, we've a psychiatrist on it, we've mental health experts, we have perinatal nurse specialist, and they talk about like the trauma and vicarious trauma. Our director of nursing in mental health, he did a talk on vicarious trauma. So it's actually very good to listen to, and it helps you understand better why people react the way they do.
Yeah, excellent, great. Okay, the next question then, comment made, there was a very interesting presentation. How can we instill psychological safety across a diverse team? So are there any things that we should be mindful of, or any advice?
I would say get to know your team is most important. And like, healthcare is so busy. I came from the hospital and I still work very closely with our local hospital, and people are so busy and they're so stressed, and I can see it. They're trying to, and our healthcare patients, their needs have become more complex. But sometimes even just that 2 minutes, like we have a motto here, that we try to have a quick huddle once a week, just to check in. How is everybody? We have people that might say, like, even like, how are you? Do you want a cup of tea? Is everything okay? And we've got to know each other. I know in healthcare people are under pressure, but when you work with somebody day in, day out, you do know them, they're, and a split second, just to, before handover, during handover, it breaks, whatever, just get to know your colleagues, and then you will know. It's amazing how, but again, that has to take good leadership, and that has to come, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the leaders. It's small things. So I don't know, would you add anything to that, Selene? I think it's about, I suppose, knowing the team, promoting it, encouraging it.
And knowing yourself, first of all, actually, and asking that question, like, and I asked the question thinking that I wasn't probably going to get any feedback, probably say, oh no, you're great. When I asked the question to Karen, and I said, and she said it, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was like that. We don't know what we're like ourselves. And sometimes when we turn up at work as well, we're bringing our families with us, we're bringing our problems and our traumas with us. And actually in the car park saying, okay, I'm in work now, I'm here for the next 8 or 12 hours. I'm just going to take a breath and take a moment, and I'm going to turn up in the best way I can. And I will also say, in teams, even if something has happened, and in healthcare, I think people listening will know what I'm talking about, especially during COVID, when we had outbreaks and there was lockdowns and there was really bad moments, or when you've got a lot of patients waiting for admission, or there's something has happened, teams can really feel the pressure. You can always restart. You can always press that restart button. You can call that meeting, without the scary agenda, I guess, and say, listen, we're going to meet. We're just going to meet together, and we're going to have a conversation. And can we start again? I know X, Y, or Z has happened, but can we just start again? And you can even, everyone, as Teresa said, leadership now is everybody's business in nursing. So leadership is on our code of conduct for everybody, and everybody can be a leader. And again, it's absolutely, leadership is so important. And yes, there was, when you're seeing them 2s, 3s, your add-ons, or whatever your role is, but again, it's everybody's business. If someone's going to show up and start rabble-rousing or start, whispering, and that can really infiltrate in teams. So actually, everyone deciding, and someone saying to you over your coffee break or your lunch break or whatever it is on maybe your WhatsApp group, and saying, we attended a talk today, it was on psychological safety. There's some really interesting things. Maybe we can talk about it.
I'm just going to come in there, Teresa, because I've just finished my studies, and When we do talk about the WhatsApp group, use with caution, guys. It's one of the key stressors for people is our WhatsApp groups, and people overthink when they look at it, and they never feel they're off duty, and they find it really hard to do the work-life balance. So be careful what we post on our WhatsApps. I think it's very important. The other thing, I suppose, is smile. Like, all it takes is one person to smile, and you mightn't feel a bit like smiling, but in actual fact, smiling is one of the greatest de-stressors that we have, because it releases endorphins, and even if you don't feel like smiling, it's very effective.
And to remember, I suppose, as well, you know, that we're all human at the end of the day as well. So, you know, we all need, none of us are an island. It's important that we all support each other. Just moving on to the next question then. Is there any way to make an assessment of the current status, I suppose, of a team in terms of psychological safety, cultural competencies, and how do we start that conversation with our teams?
And again, I suppose if you feel it starts, I suppose, just starts with one person. That's all it takes. Just one person, just to say, right, we need to work a bit better. We need to increase awareness about this, because if we get the teams right, we'll get the patient care right. If we can have a greater understanding of each other, then we'll be able to have a greater understanding of our diverse patients when they come in, and our multicultural. So I think it's about starting the conversation locally. How do you start it? A conversation. Even things like, you know, and I'm not a big socializer. I don't particularly like going out. So I'm not saying people all go out and socialize together, because we're all so busy. We all have our lives, and we like to keep our work-life balance. But we spend an awful lot of our time at work. You know, you think about how long we work, and I did a recent presentation on stress, and I talked about that. Like, if you live to be 80, you'll have spent 40 years at work. You spend 30 years asleep. So it's important to figure out what we've left to enjoy. So we have to make work pleasant. Sometimes our work colleagues know us better than our families, because we've shared a lot of experiences with them. So I think it's about starting the conversation, and it's not necessarily about having big nights out or having big social gatherings. It's about just that, you know, we've all worked with that one person that was always nice, that you always felt safe when they were on. And it's just about small things come, you know, big things come from small acorns. Just something as simple as sitting or saying, we tend to avoid, because we're thinking, I'm too busy, I'm so focused, I'm skill focused, I have to do this A, B, C, D, task orientated, where in actual fact, it doesn't take that much time, and it really doesn't take that much time just to even get to know each other and say, what's life like for you now? And then it is important, very important, that we have one go-to strategy for our de-stressor, one go-to, and maybe bring in our international colleagues into that. It only takes very small steps to create big differences.
Yeah, great, lovely, thank you for that. And our final question then, psychological safety is part of the standard nursing training now. How do you bring that to the fore in Sligo?
Do you want me to come in there, Selene?
Oh, sorry, Teresa, you go
Yeah, how we bring that to the fore, again, it's our leadership, and it's about building those relations. We're not just the CNME, and we're not just the public health nurses, and we're not just the acute service, and we're not just the midwives, we're not just the doctors, we're not just the physios, it's about all working together. And how do you start with that? Again, very simply with our education. So when we're delivering, it's about opening our doors to everybody. And it's like every relationship, if you don't work on it, and if you don't make that effort and reach out to people, and again, it's about bridging those gaps, because we do tend in the past, historically, to have them and us, like Selene said. But in actual fact, none of us can function without each other. And it's about just being inclusive. Like, it's like somebody recently came to me from the household staff, and they said, you know, can I just check, are we allowed to go to any of the education or any of the days? And I said, absolutely. We have an extremely supportive, and it's with the leadership. It's 100% with the leadership. I said, you've extremely supportive managers in your setting, and they encourage it, and we welcome it. So it's about just, I suppose, being inclusive. It's all about that inclusivity, because that's then how you break down maybe a lot of barriers, and you start. Is there anything you'd like to add there, Selene? Just how do we do it? That's how we're doing it in Sligo, and that
we're making those connections. So we have a podcast called CNME Connects as well. Sorry, now I'm here promoting our podcast too. So we have 11 podcasts now that we've created. You know, it's using the expertise that we have in the area that's across the country. So we've gone from midwives to breastfeeding podcasts to Anna Burke, our colleague in Sligo, who has her wonderful life story. And I mean, the expertise, the care, the kindness, the connection that we have and that we've established, and that we're trying to establish more connections, is really important. I also think that we can always ask the question of, like, what behaviours are in and what behaviours are out? Can we have a conversation as a team? And often if we're teaching here in CNME, we'll talk to the attendees first of all and say, can you decide what the rules are for today's meeting? You know, and people will say, you know, can people mute their phones? Can people, you know, interact? You know, is it okay if I have a comfort break? And all those things, you know, having the rules. So what's in my team and what's out? What's really unacceptable and what's acceptable? And then again, asking yourself, do you have a mentor you can speak about self-development? I think that's really important, or about changes. So I know when I was working in Sligo Hospital, Teresa was my mentor. She mightn't have elected herself, but I elected her. So I used to go over to her office, knock on her door, and she'd come in and say, come in, sit down. You know, so she was my mentor. Having a mentor at work is really important. You can have these discussions in a confidential way as well. And again, ask yourself, what are my biases? Have I got bias? Because we all have. I know, am I culturally competent? You know, am I familiar with the people that I work with? And again, starting that conversation off, tiny little conversation, you know, again, with an open, honest, confidential space where you can have these conversations. And again, you know, I suppose sometimes when you're listening to something like this, you think, but that couldn't work in my area. Yes, it can. It can work in your area. And every area can change. Change is absolutely possible. And when you look at that big study that Google did that put a huge amount of funding into over a 2-year period, and they found the top teams, what was the common denominator, the most important element was psychological safety. So it absolutely can work, and you can absolutely do it in your area as well.
Yeah, and what we actually found as well is that people are dying to tell their story, Loretta. They're dying to tell their story. They really want to, you know, and no matter who we go to, you know, somebody said to me one time, how did you manage to get her to speak for you? Because we haven't been, like, how did you manage to get that high profile person to, I said, I asked her. She says to me, nobody ever asked me. Nobody ever asked me. So sometimes we just have to say, what you can get 2 answers, yes or no. So we reach out to people all the time. We actually have found now at our cultural cafe, we have a queue of people that want to tell their story. Massive amount of people, you know, so it's a case of, and we want to be inclusive and not make anybody feel left out, but people want to tell their story. They want to be heard, they want to be involved. So it's amazing when you start the ball rolling. You might be just surprised. And I suppose we start off as well. Sometimes when we have sessions, we break into, you know, by the nature of humans, we'll navigate to where we're comfortable. We sit with the people that we know. And I always say, I've gone to conferences and I will sit with the people I don't know. Because if I sit with the people I work with, what's going to happen? It's like it's going to turn to work, and it's like sitting in the tea room. We're going to talk about work. So I always make an effort now to sit with random strangers, and I get to know them, and I've learned so much. But most people, when you reach out to them, they actually want to tell their story, they want to be involved, they want to be included, they want to be on every side, they want to be part of it, but we're reluctant. So that's the way to promote it, I suppose, is start small and just be inclusive and say, you know, or even like we all have breaks, we're entitled to breaks. And again, just when we do mention breaks, when I was doing my study and it was about stress, in actual fact, one of the things that people found, people weren't looking for to be compensated. They weren't looking for huge amounts of money, and they weren't looking for big promotions. The thing that made people feel valued and respected at work was a simple thank you. Thank you for your, without being patronizing, thank you for your work today. Thank you for your hard work. And even things like, sorry, somebody doesn't understand me. Google is here. So apologies for that. But even people getting their breaks, they said, my break was so important, just to get my break. I'm not looking for an hour's break, but to get that quick cup of tea. You know, how many times have we, or drink, or whatever it is. So it's the simple things that promote that whole safe environment, that you know you're going to get your break, that you know you're appreciated, that even though we're busy, we're all pulling together and we can work together.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, thank you for that. That's really good. Listen, I'm going to hand you back to my colleagues now, but I just want to thank you for such an insightful and rich information presentations, and the comments are just saying wonderful presentation, excellent presentation. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to hand you back to my colleague now, Ellie and Kelly. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Selene. Thank you so much, Teresa. What a wonderful presentation. I hope you get the chance to have a look in the chat box for all of the fan comments that you've received as you were presenting. And there's some really wonderful insights. Someone used the term rich there to describe both your presentation, but also you'll see some of the insight in the chat is really rich. And thank you all for your comments. We're at the end of our presentation today, but we just want to say thank you again to Selene and Teresa, and say I hope that you will return one day to us to share more insights from your team, from your work and your cultural cafe, because I think I hope you're not completely inundated now that you've come and shared all of that with us, but I think it's been a real hit, so people will be coming to you for tips. Colleagues, we just
to say, Ellie, we're more than happy to support. We're more than happy to share. Anything we have, we will share. Any ideas, any tips, any curriculums we have, we're more than happy to share. And I know the hospital are the same, all our services. We're just very fortunate in that there's good working and sharing.
Oh, thank you so much for that. There you go, colleagues. What a wonderful invitation to you all, an opportunity to take up. We're just going to finish by saying one more thing, because we've spoken a bit there, or Teresa and Selene were speaking there about trauma-informed care, and we just want to flag that our next webinar is in fact on trauma-informed care. It's on Wednesday the 29th. And it's at the slightly later time of 12:30. So please join us for that. We're just finally going to close with our standard messages of promotion. Please do complete our webinar evaluation. You've received the email today with the link to that. We'd really appreciate that. It really helps us to know where to go with our webinars, how to shape them, and give you the best offering that we can. We always like to remind you, and particularly this Open Disclosure Themed Week, that the e-learning module, Module 1, Communicating Effectively Through Open Disclosure, is available on HSE land. We don't like to bandy about the phrase that it's mandatory training, but you might want to remind your colleagues in your team that it is Open Disclosure Themed Week, and a good chance, a good opportunity to get that mandatory training up to date and completed, and do, as I say, share it with your colleagues. And finally, if you are somebody who is supporting, participating in, leading open disclosure conversations, we recommend that you complete Module 2. In fact, you should complete Module 2, Open Disclosure Applying Principles to Practice. And that is also available on HSE land. So thank you again for your time today, and thank you again to our presenters, and we hope to see you again next time. Thanks so much. Bye. Thanks.